Welcome to the new podcast, A Mick, A Mook, and A Mike, hosted by four-time Emmy-nominated producer Frank Pace, with retired New York City firefighter and Vietnam vet Billy O'Connor.
My brother.
Got a big smile.
Yeah.
Big smile on your face this morning, brother.
Who knew?
Who knew that you'd have a smile?
Certainly not Derek.
Well, you know what's interesting? When you got a smile on your face, it's noteworthy. It's like
It's noteworthy.
noteworthy. You can put it down and say, hey, Frank got a smile on his face this morning. You're feeling good. That's good. That's good to see you.
I'm feeling good.
Looking
I'm feeling good because we got a great guest today, Matty Laurance, my friend Matthew Laurance from Kentucky, by way of, there he is.
Handsome bugger, isn't he?
Well, he was.
We can put me and your heads up there too. The dynamic threesome.
Matty will be a great guest. He's a terrific actor. Now he's a talk show host in Lexington, Kentucky, where we met in 1999. We'll have a lot to talk about.
Well, again, it goes back to being flexible, right? In this racket, you got to be flexible, as you always say, as you profess. And obviously, you're right. So what else is going on with you, pal? How's everything? Baby's getting big? Nice being a grandpa?
Yep.
Huh?
It is indeed. I really don't believe that this baby's had as much of an effect on me as it has.
You mean it's found some tenderness in you?
Yeah,
Try a little tenderness.
Try a
Otis
little
Redding would
tenderness.
say.
It really was. You know, I'm helping coach out soccer again a little bit in the spring, and I have trouble yelling at the girls because
Really?
it's somebody's daughter or granddaughter. And I said, how can anybody yell at? How can I have been such an asshole all those years when I was yelling at everybody's granddaughter or daughter? I mean, it's crazy.
My ex-wife says that about my daughter, who, I have two grandkids. I have three children, but my oldest daughter has has gifted me with two grandchildren. And my ex-wife said that, I said, she goes, I love the way Kelly handles the kids. She talks to them. I said, well, you talk to the kids. She goes, I never talk to my kids. I yelled at my kids.
Yeah. Well, our parents and us were of that era that you got yelled at and spanked. I mean, our era.
Oh, it's spanked. I wish my old man would have spanked me.
Yeah.
When you kid me, that would have been a bargain. I mean, my old man, honest to God, he was from the other side, so he was from Cork. So, they were, people from Europe were a whole different breed. I mean, as far as, well, there was no doctors. What is Dr. Spock?
Spock, yeah.
Dr. Spock before
Mr. Spock.
Before the correct, not the guy with the pointed ears,
Yeah.
the other Spock.
Right.
It's before that stuff came along. I mean, of course you hit your kids. That's what you did. My old man just shoot me a look, and I'd be like,
yeah. My father used to walk around with the belt.
yeah,
He
snap it.
snapped the belt.
Yep.
That means big trouble.
You can't even in school.
Yeah,
I went to Catholic school. I mean, the deal was you screwed up, you get up and you hold your hand out and you get smacked in the hand, or you'd bend over and you get hit with a paddle.
I remember it in fourth grade. This gym teacher by the name of Joe Chiera just beat the shit out of me. Who knows? I probably
With his hands or
with his hands. I mean, in gym class in front of the rest of the kids.
Yeah, they're really embarrassing.
Yeah, and my father went down to see him and tell him never to do that again. But still, he could do that and get away with it.
It was part of the package. I mean, I think that they sent you to parochial school for that reason, that they were allowed to.
Well, I didn't go to parochial school, but it was great because I was in fourth grade, and I was really a fuck up in high school, in elementary school, and in high school. And Joe Chiera ultimately went on to become football coach and principal of the school, and he really never thought I would become anything. So in 1988, I got my revenge when they asked me to be commencement speaker at the high school. So he was there, and I took a cheap shot at him. But it was, you would have expected me to do that. You would expect, knowing me, you would expected me to take a shot.
Yeah, because you would have cut up and you weren't going to change. That's
and he was adamant that I would never amount to anything.
I had a history teacher in Mount St. Michael Academy. And the Mount St. Michael Academy's most famous alumni, by the way, was in Mount Vernon. It was P. Diddy, right?
Yeah.
He graduated from
Sean Combs.
Sean Puff Daddy Combs, whatever alias he's running by now, P. Diddy or whatever. But he was my most famous. Well,
hey, Derek Harris,
the guy's had about 6 names. I mean,
how about multi-millionaire? How about gazillionaire?
Oh, yeah.
How about gazillionaire?
How about pretty much a billionaire?
Oh, I said
how about gazillionaire
in America?
The most successful guy that ever graduated from my high school, without a doubt, right? But we had a teacher there.
By far.
History, yes, by far. Well, maybe not as
you
big
don't
as
know
me.
who else
Not as big as me. I mean, I got high hopes with this thing. Like I could be big.
That's
I'm smart. I'm smart. I'm not dumb like everybody says.
That's an inside joke, but if you've been following the show, you'll get it.
Everybody knows who Fredo is by now.
Yeah.
But anyway, I had this teacher, a history teacher, Brother Charles Patrick McNiff.
Brother.
And the guy looked like a Viking. I mean, the guy had to be 260 pounds, a big flaming, had blonde hair, and terrifying. I mean, like I was, you're 14, 15 years old, and this guy, I remember he was writing on the blackboard one day, a history lesson, and I was cutting up in the back of the class, bullshitting and laughing. And he just turned around. He said, "We all know that the Prince of England at that time was O'Connor." And I'm and he says, "Put the chalk down," he said. Looked at me and he said, "The next time I call on you, you will have the correct answer. Am I clear?" I said, "Crystal." History became my best subject.
Still is today.
The guy scared the living shit out of me. And his claim to fame was, and this is true as God, when we got into his class, everybody knew that Charles Patrick McNiff could take a coin, drop it from his belt, and hold the ruler over your head, smack you 3 times before the coin hit the floor. That was his claim to fame. And he later became Dean of Discipline. But that was the mentality.
How appropriate.
Yeah.
Dean of Discipline.
Well, you would go down to see Charlie McNiff. I mean, Brother Charles, he was scared shit. This guy was nuts. I mean, and I think there's a certain amount of sociopath to want to do that, to hit kids, Well, but that's the way it was.
That's the way it was. That was accepted.
Encouraged. I mean, I couldn't go home and tell my father that I had problems with his brother. And my father was a tough guy. My father was quick with his hands. That was one of he must have lost 4 jobs because somebody called him a donkey or something. He called me a donkey. What'd you do? I stretched him. But it was your boss. I stretched him. I don't give a shit. I ain't taking that because that's where he was. And I couldn't go home and tell my father that I had a problem with a brother. Could you go talk to him? My father would have beat the shit out of me first.
Of course.
And then said, don't have problems with the brother.
Yeah. That's, I think my dad thought that Cher had crossed the line. So that's why he went to see him.
Yeah.
With me. But normally he would have said, "You must have deserved it."
Yeah, without a doubt.
Or what'd you say? Because I was always saying something anyway to anybody. I was always getting, and I never stretched anybody out. I was always getting the shit kicked out of me because of my house. I tell you a funny story. We had a guy by the name of Jimmy McGinnis in our neighborhood. It was an Irish guy lived down the street.
Who could think of McGinnis?
Who could figure? And one day I must have said something to him, and he was beating the shit out of me in front of my own house. My mother came out. She started beating the rug. She took a look. She continued beating the rug. She closed the door, went back in the house. And Jimmy McGinnis kept beating the shit out of me. When he was done, I got up, walked in the house, and I said, "Mom, what?" He said, "You must have deserved it." That
was the mentality, right? It was like, if you get your ass beat, you probably deserve it, especially in school. Because I don't know how the Italians are, and I should, I guess. But the Irish, they have a thing about authority. They don't go to the police. They don't go, well, I know the Italians have a thing about the police, of course, but the Irish don't sue either. They don't sue, and they don't go to court, and they don't go to the police. They handle things themselves. I think that comes from the British. They know they're going to get screwed. If you're Irish and the British are running your country.
Well, but the Irish are the cops. And the
In New York.
In New York. And the Italians are the cops.
In New York.
And the Italians are on the take. And I don't know about the Irish, but I would guess the Irish were on the take too.
Well, you could probably buy us off for a warm can of beer. I tell you a story on that note about the corruption in the police department. Before the Knapp Commission, before, of course, Pacino made Serpico, everybody expected the police to get a little grease. The bar owners, we used to give them the flutes, the 7-Up bottles filled with whiskey. But I'll tell you a funny story. When I was working for the Teamsters Union, when I first came back from Vietnam, I guess it was 1971. And, of course, I should have known better after Vietnam, but I thought things were still on the level.
Mm-hmm.
I thought, I was a Catholic school kid. I thought, good, evil, thieves, honest people,
Yeah.
I should have realized after Vietnam that nothing was on the level, but I started working for the Teamsters, and we had a guy called the Eddie Murphy. And Murphy was one of those guys, and everybody had one in high school. A kid who's like 15 years old, but he's already an adult.
Mm-hmm.
Like he's just bigger. Probably like LeBron James was probably like
Sure.
that. 15 years old, the bone structure's
Sure.
bigger. He's just
Sure.
bigger. Well, Murphy was shaving probably when he was 13, And the Murph was a tough guy. But he was also the biggest thief on the job, right? We used to work for the Teamsters, and we were delivering for Sears appliances. And they'd load the truck out in Jersey. And the truck would come into us, and they'd give us 25 stops. We'd start in Harlem, work our way down to Manhattan, go out to Governor's Island, come back. But everybody, there was 2 neighborhoods that had the job sewn up. My neighborhood, which was all Irish, and Arthur Avenue, which was all Italian.
Right.
So it was the Guineas and it was the mix, and we were working together for the Teamsters, for Jimmy Hoffa. At the time, it was right before Hoffa went to prison. It might have been a year after. Fitzsimmons might have been in charge, but in either case, it was the Teamsters, and it was the real deal. If you tried to cross a strike,
you're big trouble.
If we went on strike and you tried to cross that picket line, your car would get an axe through the windshield, and you'd probably get the shit beat out of you because you weren't crossing the Teamster picket line in them days. And we were making, I think, $8 an hour and tips. And at the time, to give you an idea what it was like in 1971 when I was with the Teamsters, cops and firemen were making $5 an hour. Because somebody had asked me, why don't you get on a fighter? I said, what are you, crazy? I'm not working. I make $8 an hour. I had tips, anyway, but the thing was, every time, maybe once a week, we'd work, and a television would fall off the truck, or a refrigerator would fall off the truck. So in my neighborhood, everybody's house looked like a Sears showroom on the inside. It was all tenements on the outside. But if you walked in, it was all brand new appliances. Even my house, because, Ma, you want to do wash machine? We'll get you the wash machine. Of course, if the machine cost $350, it fell off the truck, we'd sell it for $175, right? So,
Mitchie hit dad.
Yeah.
Last week's episode, Mitchie hit dad.
You couldn't afford not to do business with us, right? The Teamsters. And of course, I was working with all the guys from Arthur Avenue who were all with the bed guys.
Right,
These guys, they were all, and Murphy, in our neighborhood, and nobody was going to rat anybody out either, because this was a neighborhood thing. You don't rat out your buddy, you know. But anyway, one day I'm working with the Murphy. Now, I'm just about to climb into the truck, and I'm still just a kid. I guess I'm 22. And the Murphy's only 24. But like I said, he's one of these guys who looks like he's 35, right? And a tough guy. So, about to get on the rig, and somebody comes out and says, the shop steward wants to see Murphy in the office. So, okay. So I get off the truck with Murphy. We go into the office before we got in the run. And the shop steward says, listen, Murphy, listen. I could lose my job for this. He goes, but I got to warn you. He says, Sears is fed up of you. It's not on the truck. It's not on the truck. Every day, there's a piece missing from your truck. They're not stupid. He says, they're putting spotters on you today. He says, I could lose my job for telling you this. For the love of God, don't steal anything today, for the love of God. So I get back on the ring and I put a marble on my mouth and I'm shaking like this. I says, oh, Murph, I says, thank God, right, that Mikey D gave us the heads up, told us about the spotters. He says, what do you mean? He says, I got a television sold. He goes, we got to drop it. I said, what are you kidding? I says, he just told us. He says, I said, what happens if they bust us? He goes, no, we got to do what we got to do. I said, what does that mean? I said, I ain't killing anybody. Well, what does it mean? He goes, don't worry, I'll figure it out. Now, this is how the balls of this guy. This is the Murph. We pull out of the shop, and of course, we make 3 or 4 stops, and now he starts looking in the rearview mirror, and he sees the 2 spotters following us, right? The car. Every time we get out, make a stop, make a delivery, the spotters pull over, we pull out, he follows us. He goes, yeah, I'm watching the spotters. So I said, well, look, Murph, forget about the TV. He goes, no, I got that TV sold. We're dropping the TV. I says, oh, for Christ's sake. And I'm like, now I'm ready to take Quaaludes, anything. I'm shaking like a leaf. So he says, I got it. And this is how cute he was. He pulls over in front of a police station. And he goes up the steps of the police station, comes out about 5 minutes later. He starts laughing. He starts the car. He starts laughing. I said, what the hell was that all about? He goes, I went in. I told the desk sergeant that I drive for Sears, and I'm carrying a lot of CODs, a lot of money in my pocket. And there's 2 guys I think are following me. So the cop says, go back in the truck, act like nothing happened, we'll take care of it. Now he's looking through the rearview mirror, and the 2 guys, the spotters, are following the truck, and there's a cop car following the spotters, right? After about 2 more stops, sure enough, whoa. And they pull over the 2 spotters. Murphy takes off and we drop the TV.
That's great.
I mean, those guys had brass balls.
Yep.
And then they come back and tell the shop steward it wasn't on the truck. I mean,
Wow.
yeah. It was them days you learned a lot on the streets, man. The streets.
I'll tell you a quick story. I was working at a moving storage company for 4 or 5 years, and we used to have a guy by the name of Noli Bowser, and Noli was a little guy. He was like 5'2", 115. He was like Prince's size, 5'2", 115 pounds. But he was the strongest guy you ever seen, and he could hump a refrigerator and drink like nobody ever could drink before. So one day, and sometimes he would get drunk on the job. So one day he really went out of the bender, and he drank like 43 cans of beer or something, or over the course of the job. And when he came out, he would throw his beer on the. So the boss's name was Sandy Gold, Mr. Gold. So Mr. Gold would come out and he said, "No," and Noli had a stutter, by the way. And Noli said, "Noli, did you drink all these beers?" He goes, No, Mr. Gold. I gave Barron one and I gave Tucker one." So with that, why don't we go to Matty Laurance? My good friend Matty Laurance.
Sure, Frank. Whatever you like.
Oh, fuck you. There he is.
Hello there, Matthew. How are you, pal? Nice to know you. My name is Billy O'Connor. Great to have you on the show.
I know who you are, Billy O'Connor.
Lieutenant Billy O'Connor, New York
I'm
FD.
sorry,
New York
Lieutenant.
FD retired.
Former, yeah.
Retired. That's what retired means, you putz.
Oh, really? Let me write that down. You mind if I borrow it? Retired. Former. I got you.
How you doing, pal?
I'm doing good, Frank. It's so great to see you. It's been too long, buddy.
It's been
Too long.
I know we met at the 1999 Children's Charity Classic in Lexington, Kentucky, where Matthew was visiting then, lives now. And we've been good friends ever since. Matty knows every word to The Godfather.
Everywhere.
So do you think it's the greatest movie ever made like I do? I think it's the greatest film ever made.
It's the greatest film ever made, Billy. And also, Godfather 2 is included in that.
I agree.
First, that 1 and 2 together, that cut is the greatest film ever made.
We said,
I mean,
I couldn't agree with you more.
We said that 2-3 weeks ago. Hey, Matthew, I want to ask you: are you are you on your computer or on your cell phone?
I'm on my computer.
Okay, because it's bouncing around a lot of you.
Yeah. That's me.
That's
He's effervescing. Leave him alone. He's effervescing.
Something's going on here in Lexington, Kentucky, Frank. I don't know what it is. There's waves going over. I don't know.
We're back out of the outer limits.
It's the desk.
Wait, hold it. Is this a show where you do research?
Can you imagine?
I'm not ready. I'm not prepared.
But you don't have to do research on yourself, or maybe you do.
Okay.
But let me ask you a question. You and your brother Mitchell, how the fuck did you guys get into Tufts?
All right, I'm a little insulted.
Well,
I don't know how my brother got it. I know how I got it. Frank, the answer is we couldn't get in there today. I think the fact that, and I'm being serious, that we were twins and president and vice president of the class and 4 sports and 1600s on the SATs probably had something to do with it. And
wait. 1600s. Is that 2?
That's perfect score.
Yes, but not for 2 people.
That's right.
Good point.
Billy, this is why he's who he is.
That's it.
I wasn't going to say it.
Matthew, you're absolutely right. That's why he got the big bucks, pal.
Right.
That's it.
Right.
I'm trying to scrape by on my pension. Thank God I ran into him. He's going to make me a millionaire.
Yeah, sure. Don't spend that money.
$50 a week. So yeah, it's a tough shit. That's pretty impressive, man. In fact, I was doing research on you, and you have a really impressive resume. You've been, you do whatever it takes to make it work, pal.
Billy, I'll tell you something, and you'll hear this from me more than once. I have been incredibly blessed in my life. Every time, for some reason, especially because of this golf show I'm doing now, I've been connected to people where I've been doing. All of a sudden, I get a text about, would you do this podcast about Beverly Hills 90210? And so I do that, and they ask me questions like you guys, and every time I talk about what my life has been like, I'm the most blessed guy in the world. I have had the most wacky, insane life I think of anybody I know, to be able to have done all the things that I've done. That I'm sitting here doing this, and that I want you to know, Billy, to me, he's my godfather. You guys talk about the movie, Frank, he'll tell you. I've called him my Don for as long as I can remember. I don't let anybody in the world call me Matty, except for my Don.
I didn't know that.
We were just talking about that. I said, "Is it Matthew? Is it Matt? Can I call him Matty?" That's an East Coast thing. Well, you're an East Coast guy. You're a New York guy.
Queens.
Yeah, you're a Queens guy.
This is going to be a salute to Long Island, by the way.
I never called him Frank in my life. I call him Frankie. That's I'm Billy. I'm not Bill. I mean, Tommy. Nobody calls him Tom. New York thing is Dan. No, Danny. Everybody gets a Y.
I've never been called Matt. It's either Matthew or Shithead, or the two names that I've got.
But that's when they confuse it with Mitchell.
You see, this is why he's my Don. That's exactly right.
We have a fixation almost with The Godfather. One of the reasons I think The Godfather is the greatest movie ever made is because of the character arc. Michael starts out and he says to Kate, "That's my father, Kate. That's not me." And at the end, of course, he closes the door and becomes his father, which is just a perfect character arc. But we have a thing about Fredo. And because Frank told me that you have read and could quote The Godfather ad infinitum, that one scene where he's with Michael and he says, "You passed over me. I'm smart. I'd love to get your take on it."
You ready?
Yeah, I'm ready. Boy, am I ready.
I'm smart. I'm not dumb. I'm smart. And I want respect.
Oh, fucking fucking great. Great. I couldn't have scripted it any better. Thank God. Terrific.
Well, later on in the broadcast, we'll do who's the Fredo with you,
Okay.
and
All right.
and Billy, and you'll decide who's the Fredo. So
Okay. That's great, by the way. I love when Frankie told me about that. I'm sorry, Frank. I didn't mean to call you Frankie. I'm sorry.
call me Cheech, whatever you
Cheech.
you want.
Don Cheech.
Don
Don
Cheech.
Cheech.
Don Chichio? Okay, that's different. Okay.
So Matthew, how did you get your start in acting? What made you decide to go to LA, or what? How'd you get the bug?
That came much later, and I really think this is true. The first play I ever did was in 8th grade. I played Hugo in Bye Bye Birdie, and I think it was because I was an identical twin, and when you're an identical twin and you're growing up, you're kind of looking for a way to just be your own person, and it was something that Mitchell didn't do. And I think my personality was developed because I wanted people to notice me, really, which is what every actor wants. And I started in junior high school in 8th and 9th grade. I did plays all throughout 9th grade, musicals. And then when I got to Tufts, I did plays at Tufts, but I was going to go to law school. And my father, I'll also tell you, and Frank knows this about me too, I'll choke up several times during this, which I do now with dog food commercials. So, my father grew up very, very poor, started working when he was 8 years old. And all he ever wanted for my brother and I was that he didn't have to worry about us. So for most of our lives growing up, he was going to be a doctor and I was going to be a lawyer. And that, for some reason, that was always talked about. And when I got to Tufts, my senior year, I had done theater there. My senior year, I was in the middle of my law boards. And I put the pencil down and I looked around and people were going nuts in there. And I said, I don't want to do this. I just don't want to do it. And I went home. It was Christmas vacation. And we were sitting at the dinner table and my father said, have you sent your applications in? I said, no, they're sitting on my desk. He said, isn't it getting late? And I said, I don't want to do it. And he looked at me and he said, really, what are you going to do? And talk about going from the sublime to the ridiculous, something where he'd have to worry about me every minute of his life. I said, I want to be an actor. And he got up from the table and he walked in the living room. And my mother said, you got to give him a minute here. This is a bombshell.
You broke his heart.
Well, I waited and I went in and my father just said, just leave me alone, which destroyed me. And I went up and I had trouble sleeping that night. And my father came in at 6 a.m. the next morning and he sat down on the bed. Here I go. And he said, if this is really what you want to do, I will do everything I can to help you. And he did. And I have the most amazing parents in the world. And I struggled. It was like for every actor. I went to the neighborhood playhouse for a year, which was an incredible blessing to study with Sandy Meisner. And then I looked very young, and back then there were no shows like 90210. There were no jobs for young actors. And I looked young. I couldn't get an agent. I did a lot of off-Broadway theater. I was a waiter for 6 years. I drove a cab for a year. I worked with Zippy the Chimp for 3 months.
It's an animal act.
Do you remember Zippy the Chimp? He was on Ed Sullivan more than any other act.
Roller skating, right? Wasn't he always roller skating?
He did everything.
I swear to God, I think I remember. He was always roller skating.
Now, I'm not kidding. He did. He was world famous. He had calendars. He had Everybody knew Zippy the Chimp.
By the way, Zippy will be on our podcast in June.
Let me tell you something. They're now on their 12th Zippy.
Wow.
But my girlfriend at the time who was a waitress also, one day said, I saw a thing in the paper. The guy was from Freeport. He lived in Freeport out on Long Island. And it said, couple needed to work with Zippy the Chimp, something like $300 a week each. And it was a lot of money. This was like in 1975.
Yeah,
maybe.
it's a lot of money.
Yeah. So we drove out to Freeport. This guy had a mansion. And it turned out he put himself through Cornell with this chimp, Zippy. And they did birthday parties and all kinds of stuff. So we said, this will be great. And we worked with them for 3 months. We had a little camper, and we would drive to private birthday parties and shopping malls we would open. And I was the guy in the tuxedo, and she was in a dress, and he would come out, roller skate. He'd sit in a high chair. I'd put makeup on him while I sang He Enjoys Being a Girl. All this stuff was going on. And I loved it. And we would, you'd take him into restaurants, and the people loved him. He'd sit in a high chair. But they are the biggest bullies in the animal world. And if they sense that you're scared of them, which she was, they go after you. And one day after 3 months, he came up and he started messing with her, and she went to hit him on the nose like you're supposed to do, and he bit her hand. And I don't know why, but she said, that's it. I'm not doing that anymore. I don't know why.
So did you break up with her?
Yes, immediately.
and you stayed in the act.
For a long time.
The chip stays, you go.
That's right. That's what happened.
Take it.
Hey, look, it could have been worse. She could have been working with Siegfried Roy. You know what I mean?
Leave the girl, save the chip. Take the chip.
Take the chip.
Could have been worse. So tell
anyway.
me about your experience in 90210. And I'm dyslexic, so if I got the numbers wrong. But you went there to work one episode.
Well, here's what happened with that. And I'll go back a little to how my career got started, because it's a really...
Yeah, because I want to hear about Sal. I want to hear about Sal.
Well,
and Michael Pare.
That'll come too. Believe me. As I said, I'll get to 90210 in a minute, Billy.
Yeah, please. Ignore me and go on with the story.
I got my first job with in a movie called Prince of the City that Sidney Lumet directed.
Treat Williams.
Was an iconic, one of the great directors of all time. And I won't go into the whole story about how I got the part, but when Sidney hired me, it was only 2 scenes in the movie, but every actor in New York read for that movie. Everybody wanted to be in it. And when Sidney hired me, that meant to everybody that I was good.
Yeah.
And people would say to me, if Sidney hired you, you can act. I was with a real small agency in New York. I was sitting in the lobby of William Morris to see a friend of mine. And the movie hadn't come out yet. And this guy walked through, William Morris, and he had a cigar in his mouth. And he walked through the waiting room, and he stopped and he said, "You're in Prince of the City, right?" I said, "Yeah." He said, "I just saw the dailies yesterday. I'm Treat's agent, Treat Williams' agent."
Williams.
And he turned to this woman at a desk and said, "Sign him." Out of nowhere. And so I signed with William Morris, and that was really the start of everything for me. I went out to California. Frank, I got to tell my Dead Men Don't Wear Plaid story.
Please.
I'm doing an off Broadway play with a guy named Gene Davis, whose brother Brad Davis was the star of Midnight Express.
Right, I remember.
Great film.
A great film. Anyway, Gene was staying in my apartment, and we were in there one night, and he was married to a great woman named Penny Perry, who was a pretty big casting director in LA. And he's talking to Penny on the phone, and he hands me the phone, and Penny says, "I can't bring you out here, but if you can get out to LA, I have a meeting set up with you with Carl Reiner. Now, I knew every line from 2000-Year-Old Man, every line. I grew up with that album, and Carl and Mel Brooks were my idols. I get on a plane, I go out to LA. I have no idea what she says. Penny says, you're probably not going to want to do it, but come out anyway. So I get out there and I can't even speak. I go into this room and it's just me and Carl Reiner. And he says, you're not going to want to do this, but I'm going to tell you what it is. I'm doing a film. It's very secretive. We can't talk about it. I'm doing a film with Steve Martin. It's called Dead Men Don't Wear Plaid. And we're using a technique that's never been done before in films. We're going to use all clips of old-time actors. Jimmy Cagney, Fred McMurray, Alan Ladd. He starts naming these. He said, but your face will never be seen on screen. You're going to be the back of those guys, their neck, their hands, the back of your head. So I understand if you don't want to do it. I said, wait, I'm going to be like working with you and Steve Martin? He said, yeah. I said, okay. Do I have to pay you to do this? Because I will if you want me to. Anyway, I go out to LA, and for weeks, it's me and Carl and Steve Martin. And one of the greatest experiences of my life. And this is the best part. The first day I go in and I'm sitting in my director's chair on the set. And Carl's is next to me because it was just the three of us in a lot of these scenes. And Carl comes in, he says, good morning. It's first day. And he's drinking some coffee and he says, I'll be right back. I got to go to the bathroom. And I said to him, good luck on your wending, which is a line from 2000-Year-Old Man. Carl turns to me, he goes, you know that album? I said, every line. I know every line. He goes, okay. He goes to the bathroom, he comes back. Every day, Carl would do parts of 2000-Year-Old Man with me as Mel Brooks.
Oh, wow.
Carl Reiner starts the routine, I do Mel. The next day, he does a different one. I mean, this is what I mean. I hear myself saying this, and then years later, a few years later, I got a call from my agent. She said, they just made you an offer to do Carl Reiner's new movie. You're going to be playing Carrie Fisher's husband. I went, what? And I get there the first day, and Carl says, it's been driving me crazy that your face was never seen in that movie. And now your face will be seen. He said, I don't know if that's a good thing, but your face will be seen.
What a class act. What a class act.
He was the greatest human being next to Frank. He was the greatest human being.
Well, my relationship with Howie Morris goes way back, and Howie was, one of the guys.
Shows.
Shows.
With Carl and Mel.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
And he tells stories. He told me that the night before every show, they did 90 minutes live. Every show, he and Carl would go under the stage and vomit. Violently vomit before every show, and then they would come out and they would do their 90 minutes.
Wow.
Flawlessly. And they would do
like Bill Russell.
Yeah, right. Exactly like
Bill Russell did the same thing?
Yep.
Before every game.
Yep.
Yep.
That's a Roman word, purgatory. That's what they purged.
Is that right?
Yeah.
No.
But actually, Carl Reiner grew up in my neighborhood with Rob Reiner and Penny Marshall and Calvin Klein. They all came from one building on a concourse, which on the fire department, we call it an H-type. You know, where there's two separate wings and it's connected by the hallway. And they all grew up in that one building. And I was a kid and I met Carl Reiner. I was like 6 years old. And
That's amazing.
Yeah,
shook hands with him. But what a class act. That's an amazing story. So that was your impetus.
That was my now, you want to hear about Eddie and the Cruisers?
Yes, of course.
Okay.
Now,
so I get a call.
Is that your most famous part, or was you think 90210 is, or was Duet, or what?
No, not Duet, although that it's on now on different channels, so people have been exposed to it. But it's amazing. 90210 when I get to that part of this is, as we know, it's 30 years now.
Wow.
The last episode was 1999, so it's 22 years. Is that right?
Sure.
The math. Yeah.
I went to Jacksonville. I can't tell you. I didn't go to Tufts. I went to
I didn't
Jacksonville.
took math at Tufts, Frank. Believe me.
Well, I went to UF. We only did everything in Roman numerals.
Yeah.
We didn't even bother with the Arabic bullshit.
Are you eating?
No, I'm regurgitating. I'm sick, Frank. I'm a sick man, Frank. I'm sick. Don't make fun of my illnesses. I'm sorry. Go ahead, Matthew.
So good. Anyway, one day I get a call. I was in New York, and I get a call that they want to see me. No, I was in LA. That's wrong. I had just moved to LA, and it was about 1981 or 82, and I get an audition for this movie, Eddie and the Cruisers. And I go, originally it was to play the lead guitar in the movie. Now, I grew up playing the accordion and the saxophone, and I was very musical. I had done a lot of musicals. And so I go to this audition, and there were a lot of people. Jeff Goldblum is sitting there for the same part. There's a lot of guys in there for this role. And I go in, and I meet with Marty Davidson and his sister, Eileen, and I'm sitting there, and Marty asked me if I played the guitar, and I said, no, but I'm the best air guitarist you've ever seen. I could convince you I'm playing the guitar right now with no guitar in my hand. He said, really? I said, yeah. So I went out and got a cassette of Santana, Black Magic Woman, and did air guitar for which I can still do every note in Black Magic Woman. And I left. Then I get a call. They want me to go to New York with 2 or 3 people for every role, and they were going to do improvisations. That's how they were going to cast the movie. So I went to New York. It was the first time I met Michael, and we did these improvs and everything. And then they called and said that I got the job. And I walked around in New York. I flew to New York to start filming, and we didn't have the music yet. John Cafferty and the Beaver Brown Band were working on the music. And I walked around in New York with headphones and a Walkman, listening to Springsteen, every Springsteen song. And we had changed it to the bass and playing air bass, walking up Fifth Avenue, down in the Village. I just kept walking around doing all this. People, well, they didn't think I was crazy. It wasn't anything other people weren't doing, I guess.
New York.
Yeah, whatever. Anyway, there were 2 movies I wanted to do when I started acting. I wanted to either play center field in Yankee Stadium or play for some team in Madison Square Garden, and a rock and roll movie. We all want to be rock and roll stars, all of us. And so this for me was something pretty big. And we did all the acting stuff first while we rehearsed to become a band that night. And it was brutal. I mean, we sucked. We had, the only guy that was in a band was Tunes, the sax player. All of us, none of us knew how to. Berenger couldn't play the piano. Michael couldn't sing. He couldn't play the guitar. And we worked really hard. I worked with Michael on the lip syncing part of it. I didn't think he would be able to do it when it actually came time to do it. And somehow, some way, when we got to shoot the music scenes, it was a miracle because Michael is, every time I watch part of it, Michael's fantastic. You'd swear he's singing those songs. The great part for me was we thought we were a rock and roll band. I mean, we believed it. And so we would go do the concert scene, which we shot at Haverford College. And I can't go into too much detail, but, there were 200 extras there. And we were doing it to playback, but they thought we were a real band. And so I'd be sitting in my trailer and they're banging on the trailer door. That's all I'm going to say.
Groupies. That's all you just groupies. That's all you can say.
No, I'm not going into detail. All I can say is, thank God they didn't have camera phones back then or any of the social media or any of the stuff we got now, because it would have been, my career would have been over. I think all of us.
Well, it had to be singing to a chimpanzee singing "I Enjoy Being a Girl." This had to be a notch higher than that.
So that
I don't know, Billy.
So
I enjoyed that. I have to say, I enjoyed that.
So that movie really blew up, didn't it? It was a big hit.
Here's where it blew up. It came to the theaters and it was gone in a week or two. I mean, nobody saw it. And about, I don't know how many months later, HBO was just starting. Cable was just starting. And it came on HBO, and I think something like within a month, the album went triple platinum. And we all went, what?
What?
And all of a sudden, everybody knew this movie because it was on cable. And here's the amazing thing. And now I think it was released in 83 or 84. So we're talking, this is a long time ago, almost 40 years. I still get people all the time talk to me about Eddie and the Cruisers. This is a great little story. In the same way I met Frank, I was incredibly blessed to play in 100 celebrity golf tournaments. I don't know how many. And the biggest one we had was called the Crosby. And it was played in North Carolina after they moved it from Pebble Beach. And there were hundreds of people there. It was like a pro tournament. And it was 3 days. And one day on Friday, I'm walking up the fairway and they had ropes set up for the people to walk next to the fairways. And I look over and there's a guy, kind of a longish beard, and he's walking. And I just watched him. He's by himself. And he was obviously walking with me because I'd look over at the tee, he was there. The next fairway, he was there. And I wasn't that good and I wasn't that famous. So anyway, the next day I see him again and he's walking down the fairway. And I walked over to him and I said, "Are you following me?" He laughed. He said, "Yeah, I am." I said, "Why would you be following me? I'm not good and I'm not famous. Well, are you stalking me? Do I owe you money? Why are you following me?" He said, "I saw in the paper, I live a couple hours from here, I saw in the paper that you were going to be playing in this tournament and I had to come thank you." I said, "For what?" He says, here I go. He says, "I was in Desert Storm. And I'm from Jersey, and there were a bunch of us from Jersey. And every day I was there, we would go to the video tent, either before we went out on patrol or when we got back. And we would watch Eddie and the Cruisers every day." Wow. He said, "You got me through Desert Storm. Damn it." He said, "You got me through Desert Storm. And I just want to say thank you." I mean,
that's incredible. Incredible.
How do you even process something like that? To know, and Frank knows about this too. This is the amazing thing about that business or the music business is how the influence you have, like it or not, and how you affect different people's lives in different way. And most of the time, you never know that. I have people talk about Eddie and the Cruisers with me that say, "I grew up on the Jersey Shore and I spent my entire growing up period at Tony Mart's, which is the bar where we shot all that stuff at the shore." And they start talking about things that happened to them in their lives. And when I saw Eddie and the Cruisers, it came rushing back to me, that kind of stuff. And it always amazes me that movie has had the impact that has had even to this day. Pretty amazing.
And then you made a sequel maybe 20 years later?
It wasn't 20 years later, but the more people saw Eddie and the Cruisers, the more people talked about when's there going to be a sequel at that time, because it was set up perfectly. Michael, at the end of Eddie and the Cruisers, you see his reflection in the window. There it is. Where has he been? So I was doing Duet, my series on Fox, and I get a call from my agent. He says, "They're doing Eddie and the Cruisers too. And It's all different people, but the Scotti brothers are producing it, the record company, and you're the only one from the first one they want. They want you to be in it, and they want you to have all these scenes with Michael. And I said, oh, cool. He said, I'm going to send the script over. So I said, okay. So I read the script, and a friend of mine actually wrote it at the time, and I was not very impressed with it. I just thought there could have been a lot more done with it. And so I told my agent, they were shooting in Montreal. I had never been there. I thought, okay, that's good. And he said, I'll tell you what we'll do. We'll ask for a ridiculous amount of money for you. It was 2 weeks for you to do this. And if they say no, it's not that big a deal. And if they say yes, you'll get the money and you go to Montreal for 2 weeks. So he called me back the next day and he said, okay. They said, fine. I went, what? He said, they said, fine. I said, oh my God. I mean, it was a lot of money for 2 weeks. To me at that time anyway. And I went and we shot it and it was great. I hadn't seen Michael in those few years. It was great to see him. Our scenes in that movie, I think, are really good. Really good. But the movie, I don't think, is very good because in the movie, he's now once again the biggest star there is. His music is re-released. His picture is everywhere. And he's got the little pencil. I thought he looked like Robert Goulet. He has the little pencil mustache, and nobody knows it's him. It's like Clark Kent. I went, he's the biggest star in the world. How could nobody know that it's him? Anyway.
And so, let me back up a little bit. In the first movie, he died. But he didn't really die, but the audience thought he died. And we saw that he didn't really die at the end of the first movie.
Correct. So by the way,
car went off a bridge, didn't it?
Yes, it did. The Raritan Bridge in Jersey. And by the way, I just texted my son. This is what happens when you're at home, to come down and let our dog out. Otherwise, the dog's going nuts here. This is live. I mean, there's nothing I can do. Okay. Anyway, so that was the story with Eddie Part 2. The music was fantastic, just like the first album. Well, John Cafferty and Beaver Brown, it's just great music.
Eddie's had played a big part in your career. How about Saturday Night Live with Eddie Murphy?
You know, this is true. This is true. So I get a job on Saturday Night Live in 1980-81, and it was brutal because it was the first. Everybody from the original cast left, and Lorne Michaels left, and now Gene Domanian is producing it, and they hire new people. And I was very fortunate through my friendship with Alan Zweibel, who was one of the head writers that I went to junior high school with. I got an audition and I got this job. And Eddie Murphy, his first year, I think he was 19. He was young and very, very arrogant. He used to say, and I didn't care. He used to say to me, I'm going to be bigger than Richard Pryor. And I would say, you comparing yourself to, are you serious? Shut the F up, okay? And as we went on that year, he started to do more and more stuff, and it was pretty good. The year was very difficult. People hated us. I think a lot of it wasn't very good, but we had incredible musical guests, and that to me was the best. Standing next to a stage and seeing Aretha Franklin right there, James Brown right there. We had Prince as a musical guest who nobody knew who he was, basically. And he came out and did he was supposed to do 2 songs. He did the first song in this weird outfit, started humping the stage. People were just like this. All you could hear was that laugh. You know Eddie's laugh?
Yeah.
That's all you could hear. And Gene came running down. He's not doing his next song. we're doing this sketch. And then all of a sudden he exploded and we went, wait, that's that guy? That's the guy that was here? None of us had any idea. But the music part of it was fantastic. I got to work for a few months with a guy named Del Close, who was a genius. He was the founder of Second City and worked with all those people, Dan Aykroyd and Belushi and Gilda and all those people. We worked with him for a few months. They brought him in. And, you know, anytime, even though the audience wasn't nearly as big, anytime you're live in front of millions of people, throughout my whole career, the improv stuff I learned doing that show was carried me through a lot of things.
Yeah, the problem with you guys are the coach that replaced Vince Lombardi in Green Bay.
Absolutely.
Right.
That's exactly right.
So you were doing your improv on the fly. You were like on the job training. You never really had any improv training. You were just going with it on Saturday Night Live.
Yes, not like that. I mean, we did some improvisation stuff at the neighborhood playhouse, but this was the best improv training. Del Close invented every improv game that actors play to this day.
Yes, and.
Yeah, that kind of thing. I mean, we would do, some of us would do it, some wouldn't. There were certain members of that cast that couldn't be bothered to do it, but others could. Charlie Rocket, Denny Dillon, Gail Mathias, Ann Risley, some of Gilbert Gottfried would show up every once in a while, but not really. And speaking of that, there's a very famous episode where Charlie Rocket dropped the F-bomb live on Saturday Night Live. And I was standing right behind him when he did it. Eddie was standing next to me. And that's like it happened yesterday. I can picture that really clear. It was unbelievable.
So you weren't too broken up when you didn't return to Saturday Night Live outside of the paycheck?
Yeah, not really. And the paycheck wasn't even really that great back then. I mean, it was the first year. But I mean, I would have loved to have kept going because some of the people they brought in after that were fantastic. When Dick Ebersol took it over from Gene, but it was fine. It was great to have that experience. And then I just kind of went on, even though it took me a while to really get up and go.
So after Eddie and the Cruisers, or during Eddie and the Cruisers, did you have any exposure to Springsteen at all? Did Springsteen watch that movie, or was there any reaction from Springsteen's camp?
This is great. So
Greatly.
Listen to this. Southside Johnny, who is also in that part of the country a legend.
Asbury Jukes.
Correct, Billy Boy. He was our person that made us a band. He was hired to turn us into a band. He taught me how to play the bass. And one day, as I said, they hadn't done the music yet. One day he comes to me and he goes, are you working Friday? We were shooting in New Jersey, outside Philly. I said, no. He said, all right, you and me are going up to Clarence Clemens Club in Red Bank because the band is going to play the music live for the first time. Cool. So me and Johnny get in the car and we drive up to Red Bank, and it was called the Big Man Club. And it was like a long railroad car, 300-400 people and a stage at the end of it. And they were legends, obviously, everywhere, but especially in that part of Jersey. So Johnny and I, next to the stage, there's a door and there's a little, it's like a green room right off the stage. And the bands would go back there, and then when it was their turn to play, they'd go up onto the stage. So I'm sitting back there with Johnny, and we're just talking, and all these fans keep banging on the door to get into this room because Beaver Brown was in there with us. They weren't playing yet. And Johnny's getting really angry, and he's going to opening the door and telling him to F off, and he's yelling at him, and he's going nuts. Anyway, Beaver Brown goes up onto the stage to play. So Johnny and I are sitting there, and I said, well, let's go out front. I mean, let's do this. And all of a sudden, there's a knock on the door. They had played a couple of the songs. And Johnny gets up and he said, I can't believe they're doing this. And he opens the door. and it's Bruce. That Bruce. And
The boss.
I'm sitting in the room, and he goes, I guess I should let this guy in. And he opens the door, and in comes Bruce. So now it's me and Johnny and Bruce sitting in that thing. And it was quite a night. And they're playing, Beaver Brown is up there playing, they're fantastic. And Johnny says to Bruce, you want to do something with him? And Bruce says, yeah, okay. So I said, I'm going out. I'll be out there in the front. And Johnny says, no, you're coming with us. I said, what? You're a rock and roll star. So, let's go. So I'm up there on the stage singing backup on Twist and Shout. This is what I mean.
Here he goes. Here
That's
he goes.
amazing.
Here
It's
he goes.
amazing.
I think
Here he
about
goes.
this stuff, and anyway, it was a pretty great experience.
That's amazing. Amazing.
pretty
I got to tell you two quick anecdotes. In 1970, when I came back from Vietnam, my friend Twiggy says to me, all right, we got
Twiggy?
no, this was a skinny guy, Italian kid in the Bronx. We called him Twiggy. As a matter of fact, he was a fireman with me later. But anyway, he says to me, you got to come down to the Bottom Line. It was the Bottom Line. No, it was another place in the village. There's a show called Lemmings. You got to see the show Lemmings.
National Lampoon.
Yeah, and that was the start of all these guys from Saturday Night Live. That same, maybe a month later, he says to me, there's a guy named Bruce Springsteen playing at the Bottom Line. Now, the Bottom Line held about maybe 250 people. And they had a policy there. The guys that owned the Bottom Line in the village, I don't care if you were Mick Jagger. You waited online to get into the Bottom Line. Nobody got a head start. Nobody got a free pass. That's the way they operate. So we went to see Springsteen. I said, who is this guy? Some Jew from Long Island, Springsteen? I says, well, that's what I thought. I said, Springsteen? I never heard of him. So I go to the Bottom Line. There's 250 people. And Springsteen comes out first in a piano, and they got a spotlight on him without the band, and he does Thunder Road solo and slow and slow. And then, of course, the band kicks in, and this place holds 250 people, and I'm like, what the? I became a fanatic after that, right? The very next week, cover of Time magazine, Bruce Springsteen, the future of rock and roll.
And a cover of Newsweek at the same week.
Was he on the
cover of Newsweek at Time at the same time?
That blows me away, the Jersey, the whole Jersey thing. And Eddie and the Cruisers, the music is fantastic from that show. And it does. It's like the E Street Band all over again, though.
Well, the funny part is there were people that said, because in one of the scenes that scene that we shot at Haverford College, it was the spring concert or something. There's a banner on the wall behind us on stage. And all you see is spring. And people were going, oh, they think this is the Springsteen story, and this is this and that. And it wasn't.
No.
But Bruce and John Cafferty and the band were very close. They all grew up together. Southside and the guys in Beaver Brown and Bruce, those guys all grew up together. And the sound is the same because that's where they came from. All of them.
And my friend Billy Van Zandt and his brother Stephen Van Zandt, they grew up together. They all grew up together.
Amazing.
So go on and tell us about how you went to 90210 for a week.
Okay. I had done different things. By that time, I had my own series on Fox for 3 years. And I had done a lot of work.
Was that series Duet?
Yes.
Okay, so we have a picture of you and your brother, but we'll find it and put it up and just keep talking.
Well, that's not what Duet was, though.
Oh, it wasn't?
No, the picture I sent you of Mitchell and me is from Cop Rock.
I know, but if we said it was Duet, who's going to know it but the three of us? Now the whole world will know that we're faking it.
Remind me never to do a bad job with you.
I'm sorry, Frank.
Jesus Christ, Matthew. Jesus
so
Christ.
Tell us the story, Matthew. Wait a minute. We're going to get the picture here.
That's not me and my brother.
We're twins.
That's me and my brother. Yeah,
there it is.
Oh, wow. Oh, yeah.
That's me and Mitchie. Oh, wait. Frank, I was wrong. That is from Duet.
That's what I thought.
brother guest starred on Duet.
That's what I thought.
Yeah. I completely forgot that. There it is. Wow.
Wow.
All right, so continue with the story.
By the way, Derek is the best. He's the best.
Yeah,
Oh, yeah. We know that.
we know we couldn't do this show without Derek. Believe me.
Forget about it. Anyway, what were we talking about? Oh, so I've been on Duet, and I get a call from my agent. This was in 1990, going into 91. 90210 had been on for a year. It was the lowest rated show on television. A lot of people didn't even have Fox yet, but it was in the tank. But what they did was very smart. They, instead of reruns during the summer like everybody had done, they did new episodes. And they had a whole new audience that started watching. And I never saw the show. And I got a call one day. I just knew everybody said it was pretty bad. I got a call from my agent. He said, they want you to come in. They want you to do an episode of 90210. I said, I'm not doing that show. He said, it's to play somebody's father, and you've never played a father before. It'd be really good for you to do. Just go talk to them. So I go in and I talk to them. And I said, let me ask you something. It was supposed to be for one episode. I found out later it was a test to see how Anne, who played my love interest, my wife on the show later on, how we got on. But I said, who's my son? And they said, Brian Austin Green. Now, about 5 years before that, another thing I did in my life I can't believe, I did an episode of a very popular show that came on around Thanksgiving called Circus of the Stars. And I walked the high wire on Circus of the Stars. That's right.
Billy's been walking a high wire his entire
I'm
life.
shaking my head.
Yeah,
that ain't something you just do.
true.
I mean,
Yeah.
that's not something you
No.
had. How did you learn how to do that?
5-6 weeks of practice. What do you
Wow.
mean? I mean, you don't just get up on a 20-foot
Yeah, that's what I'm
wire.
saying. How do you do that?
Yeah.
How you do that?
Physically, that's how I do it. I do it this way. Okay, so 5 years when I did that show, there was a 13-year-old kid on the show that year who was on Dallas named Brian Austin Green. And I got very friendly with him. I loved that kid. And he was great. And when they said it was to play Brian's father, I said, I'm in. And it turned into 9 years.
Wow.
And here's the amazing thing about that show. We all know how popular it is. As I said, it's 22 years ago, the last episode. There are still fan clubs and all kinds of stuff. I had an opportunity about the 4th year I was on to go to Germany to work. And I'm a big history person. And we were shooting this stuff in what was East Berlin. I never thought I would. I'm a Jewish kid from Long Island. I'm in East Berlin, and I'm getting paid to be there too. Anyway, so the first day I got there when I wasn't shooting, I got in a cab and I went to the Brandenburg Gate, which is Napoleon's armies marched through the Brandenburg Gate. I'd been wanting to see it my whole life. And I get out of the cab and I walk over to it, and it kind of looks like the Arc de Triomphe in Paris. And I'm looking at the stuff around it and everything. And this bus pulls up. And about 30 people get off the bus, and they are Swedish tourists in what was East Berlin. Swedish in East Berlin. And one of them turns around and goes, Beverly Hills!
Wow.
Like that. And the 30 of them came rushing over to me. Pictures. They wanted autographs. They wanted asking me questions about I'm like, this is the Brandenburg Gate. What are you doing? Are you kidding me? They could have cared less where they were. But that kind of thing is when you really, like that guy at the Crosby Golf Tournament, when you really realize the impact that all this stuff has on people all over the world, really. And it continues to this day.
You
There's
know,
a great podcast on Beverly Hills 90210 that is being done by the original producers and just great people. And a lot of the original cast members have done it. I've done a couple of episodes, and it's these people. They're fan clubs all over the world still
Great.
from 90210.
Well, I think we should take this opportunity. I think you can help us with something, Matthew. Derek, can you get the slide up for Who's the Fredo? Because when we do that, Derek was going to put some audio on it in post, but I think when we put the slide up, you can do your line. You can recreate your line from "I'm smart" right over the right over that. Not that. There's two.
Okay,
Fredos.
yeah,
There
that's
it
Fredo
is.
on the right. Oh, there it is.
Okay, so now do the lines right there, and that we won't
Okay.
have to record it. Derek won't
Ready?
have to record it.
All right.
Here we go. I'm smart. I'm not dumb. I'm smart. And I want respect. I'm your older brother, Mikey, and I was stepped over. I'm smart.
Oh, that's perfect.
Terrific.
Okay,
Terrific.
so now let's keep with the Long Island tradition. I'm going to put up this week's Fredos, and
Okay.
you guys can pick one. Derek's going to look for the picture. That's the original Fredo. There they are,
Oh,
the Baldwin brothers. Look at them.
Ah,
Who's the Fredo in the Baldwin brothers? Alec, Daniel, William, and Stephen.
and Steven's got to be the Steven. Has to be the Fredo. He has to.
What do you think, Billy?
Well, I tell you, I mean, other than, I'm going to go with the guy with the white jacket. I'll go with Daniel. He looks like he's out of place.
I'm changing my Fredo.
He really looks like he thinks he's Jimmy Cagney. You know what I mean? He's got the white coat on. He's like, who the hell am I am?
Yeah,
Great.
that's great. That's terrific. That's terrific.
He looks like he'll bobble the gun.
Yep. So now you, Billy, and I know you were with Duke for a long time, but Billy asked me about Mike Krzyzewski. You have a few stories about Mike? I know you're very, very respectful of Mike.
This was again, how blessed I am. Because of my whole life has been influenced by golf tournaments, and that's serious. Everything in my life, even acting, I think, was a way for me to be invited to celebrity golf tournaments because of the people I met. I met my wife at one. I have my two boys because of playing in a golf tournament. In 91 or 92, I was invited to play in the Duke Children's Classic, which had been going on for a long time. And PJ Carlissimo was a friend of mine at that time, the great coach and now broadcaster. And he was at the tournament, and he said to me, we're going to go have dinner, all of us. There'll be a whole bunch of people there. So I go, and Mike Krzyzewski and Mickey were at this dinner, along with Jim Boeheim and Jim Calhoun and a whole bunch of people. Anyway, I sat next to Coach K at this dinner for probably about 10 people. And we ended up talking a lot during the night, and he was wonderful. And he was very interested in how acting worked, and he was just a great guy. And we developed a friendship. And over the years, I stayed very friendly with them. And he had 3 daughters who were huge 90210 fans. So I would send them scripts. I would call them and tell them what was going to happen the next week. We just stayed in touch, and I became a huge Duke fan. And in 99, I wanted to leave LA. I had been there almost 20 years, and I was sick of it. I was sick of living there. I was sick of the business. And I went to play in the Jimmy V Golf Classic, and I had dinner with Mike and Mickey the night before. And he asked me how I was doing. I said, I'm miserable. I want to leave LA. I don't know what I'll do, but I have to get out of there. And he said, why don't you come work with me? I said, what are you talking about? He said, I've been thinking about something. Just go back to LA. Give me a call when you get out there. So I called him. He said, if you want to, come here. I want you to do radio for us. I said, I've never done radio before. He said, you can do this. You know as much as any of the people that are commenting on basketball. You've been on camera for all these years. You can do it. Just come here. So I sold all my stuff. My mom flew out. We drove cross country to Durham. And for 10 years, I sat right behind Coach K for every game.
With our friend Bob Harris.
With Bob Harris all those years. And it was, there are very few in my experiences that affected me more than that. That's my family. Of course, as fate would have it, I wind up in Lexington, Kentucky, where people hate Duke more than, there's no comparable analogy to make between how much people from Kentucky hate Duke. And I've been here 12 years. I still get it. Oh, you're that effing Duke guy. I still get it.
Wow.
Well, let me ask you a question since you're talking about family, and I'll ask you a question outside of the family. How does Coach K keep all that color in his hair?
It's none of your effing business, Frank.
Oh.
He's a very young guy. He's got young genes.
Yeah, he's got Ronald Reagan hair.
He's got a lot of
he's got a lot
young
of genes. So
he is, people. There's a lot of people, like in any sport, any coach, any athlete, anything. But he is truly the most amazing man that I've ever known in my life. People have no idea the things he's done. No idea for his community, for families, he's raised millions and millions and millions of dollars and never talks about it.
Right.
Ever.
Right.
And his leadership skills, his concept of family, all the things he brought with him from West Point. There's no words for me to express how much I love that man.
And
none.
I would say people forget, but I don't think people know that you mentioned West Point. He played for Bob Knight at West Point as a guard.
Yep. And he was the youngest coach after that.
Right.
And he's just an unbelievable man. And it's been 12 years since I left there, and I still talk to them all the time. I can't we go to one game a year, but it's still really amazing.
That West Point influence, that Bobby Knight, Bill Parcells, wasn't it all because of Red Blake? Didn't that start that whole line of it?
Red Blake was the football coach
Of Army, yeah.
Yeah.
And Parcells.
Yeah. Parcells, I guess. I'm not sure about Bob. Bobby Knight was a West Point graduate also. So, that's their culture.
Yep.
I mean, that culture of discipline and.
Well, if you walk around West Point to this day, and I go up there frequently. Matter of fact, when anybody came over from Ireland, that's the first place I take them is West Point. And you walk around and all the benches say dignity, pride, honor, obedience, commitment. By the time you get done walking around, you're all swelled up. I mean, it's like, it's magnificent.
Yeah. Well, that goes back to what we were talking about before you came on. We were talking about the old school and the way our parents and everything raised us. And that's, the way Bobby Knight was raised at West Point, and that's the way he conducted himself as a coach during the 70s and 80s and 90s.
Yeah. He took it a little too far, I think, sometimes.
Well, finally, yes. Yeah.
I mean, it was just my opinion. But
finally, that's for sure.
Yeah.
So you had developed really good relationships, obviously. When you're working on 90210 for that many years, it's like a family. So, I mean, there was a few premature deaths, and that had to really have an impact on you.
Yeah. I'll tell you something. Luke, I was really close to Luke and to Jason Priestley, and except for one person on that show, I loved all of them. And people have no idea how difficult that was. They were all young. After a while, the most famous people anywhere, making a ton of money, and they were kids. And for the most part, they handled it in an incredible way. Luke was, it was devastating when Luke passed away, even though I hadn't seen him for a while, because he was a truly amazing human being. He was the kindest, most humble.
Wow.
Through all of it, when he got that job, he was paving driveways. That's what he was doing. And all of a sudden, he is the sexiest guy in entertainment. And people are throwing themselves at him. He never, ever changed.
Wow.
Ever. He was just an incredible human being. Jason, the same way. I mentioned this Beverly Hills 90210 podcast I've done. I just spoke to, for the first time since the last episode of the show, I just spoke to Brian, my son, for about an hour last week for the first time since the last episode. And it was incredible. I saw Jenny Garth and Tori. They were on the podcast I did. I got to see them and speak to them. And again, the memories came flooding back. They're an amazing group of people who had such an effect and continue to have an effect on the culture of this country. People, as I say, Frank's been around this business for a long time, and it destroys a lot of people. A lot of people become people you don't want to hang around with. All those people from that show, except one, I won't mention who it is.
Male or female?
Is she larger than a bread box?
I knew you were going to do that. I'm not saying. You're not trapping me, Frank.
So the commitment you have to the show, sorry, Frank. The commitment you have to the show, it's almost like a family. I mean, you're working with them 8 hours a day, 5 days a week for 12 years, 10 years. You watch them grow up, in essence, on your time.
Yeah. I did see them grow up. I mean, the thing is, when you're doing a series, if you're a regular, it's a different story. I think I did 40 shows or something like that, 50 shows maybe. So I wasn't on every week, but I did see all of them grow up. When I was on Duet for 3 years, and that was different because it was a sitcom. And Frankie knows about this. That we were a family. We were together every day, except Saturday and Sunday. And so it was a little bit different, but the growing up part, watching them grow up, absolutely. I saw all of them.
Yeah, I explained to Billy, when you're a sitcom, you work on the same stage every single day. When you're on a series, you may not see anybody. You may not see an actor or two actors or whatever. You only see the actors that you work with that day or 2 days. So you might not see anybody for weeks. Whenever you're on a 1 hour show.
Right.
Big difference.
Yep.
Yeah.
So Matt, now you're in Lexington, Kentucky, where we met with our good friend Johnny Bench and Dougie Flynn and our basketball coach friend Matthew Mitchell. Who ironically is named after both of you, Matthew and Mitchell.
I have the greatest picture of the three of us with Coach Mitchell in between my brother and I. It's Matthew Mitchell. It's the great picture.
How's he doing? How's he doing, by the way?
He's doing pretty well. He resigned.
Yeah.
This past season, and he's doing well.
He has some health issues, I believe.
He did, but he's doing fine, and he's another great one.
And Dougie Flynn, the former second baseman of the Mets, traded for Tom Seaver. That's why you don't like. That's why you're not very.
Yeah, but he thinks that he was the reason that he was with the Reds, that the Big Red Machine won those World Series.
Well, ask him. Ask him how many games, how many World Series did they win before he got there?
None.
How many World Series did they win after he left?
I don't know, 2.
None.
None. Oh.
None. So there's your answer. The two years he was there,
All of a sudden, you're a Doug Flynn apologist.
Oh no, I'm an unabashed Dougie Flynn fan.
Yeah. You know what, Doug? This is the best. I always make fun of him.
And he was traded for Tom Seaver, by the way.
I know. He was a great fielder, but he hit 215. And every time I bring it up, and I do it because I like hearing him say it, he goes, and every one of those hits was in the major leagues. Okay? So shut up.
He's got a point.
Doug, and all those people. I started playing in the children's charity where we met before Doug. This would have been last year would have been my 35th year at that tournament. Of course, because of the pandemic, we didn't have it. But that's how I ended up in Kentucky, was that tournament. I came in 2009 to play in the tournament. My dog's going nuts over here. I don't know where my son is, by the way. I don't know. I came to play in the tournament in 2009. We had a 5-year-old and a 2-year-old, and Shannon is from here in Kentucky, and I'd kind of been looking for a way to get them here because her family was here and her friends. And I was walking up. I played golf for 2 days with this guy, and I never ask people what they do. I don't care. And I'm walking with this guy up the fairway, and he says, "So you're playing a lot of these?" I said, "Yes, I've been very lucky." "You ever play Firestone?" I said, "No, I've never played Firestone." He said, "I'll tell you what, I'll pick you up. I'm a member there, and I'll take you to play Firestone." I said, "Okay, so you're going to drive from Lexington, Kentucky to North Carolina, and then we're going to drive to Ohio to play golf?" He says, "No, I have a plane." I went, "Oh, really?" "Oh, okay. What do you do?" He said, "I own radio stations. I have 6 of them here and a few here and a few here." I said, "Do you have a sports station?" He said, "I have the ESPN station here." I said, "I could work for you." He said, "What?" I said, "I've kind of been looking for a way to move my family here." And that was it. And a couple of weeks later, he called me and he said, "Were you serious?" And I said, "Yeah, if the money's right, I'm serious." And he told me what he would pay me. I said, "See ya. I'm not coming. Forget it." And then he called me the next day and said, "How about this?" And I said, "Okay." And that was 12 years ago now. And I do a daily show on ESPN radio here from 4 to 7 every day. I do a golf show every Sunday morning, and I do the pre and post game University of Kentucky basketball team shows.
So one would think you're a pretty good golfer, but I know otherwise.
Hey, Billy, I have a question I want to ask.
Oh, I was going to ask you handicap too. You weren't getting away with it. But a question I do have.
My handicap's Billy.
Hold on. Oh, yeah. That's a pretty good handicap, Frank. Okay. Here it is. When I was acting, as Frank knows, if you weren't working, you were playing golf, especially in LA. We used to play 5 days a week if you weren't working. And I was about a 6 handicap during those times. Now I'm 87 years old, and I play from the white tees. Yeah, that's right. And I'm about, I would say, 11 or a 12 handicap.
Right. He can't be 87. He's 87?
Tell him, Frank.
He can't be an 11 or 12. He can be 87 like he's an 11 or 12 handicap.
No,
he might be 87, but he's not an 11.
Maybe your handicap is 87.
No, Frank, no. I'm telling you, I am. I'm an 11 or a 12, and I'm proud. You know, I can barely put my
I'm smart.
I'm smart. I'm a good golfer. I'm not a bad golfer. I'm proud of myself that I can put my underwear on without falling over. So for me to get out on a golf course is, I'm very blessed physically. Thank God I'm healthy. I can't turn back and through the way I used to, but I'm still pretty good. And if I could play golf with you, you son of a bitch, you would see that I was an 11 or a 12. Okay? You hear me?
Yes, dear.
Well, you're coming out of Durham, North Carolina. North Carolina is like golf haven, right? That's like heaven for a golfer. Yeah. And then you went to Kentucky. How are the courses in Kentucky? Do they measure up?
there are great golf courses here. We have one public course that I play at every week that they play big time tournaments here. They have the National Junior PGA tournament here. They've played senior tour events here. They can play. It's a great golf course. They have great clubs here. Of course, Louisville has Valhalla, and there's all kinds of really good golf courses here in Kentucky. It's a great place for golf.
So, Matthew, you've been a terrific guest. Derek, do you have anything to ask Derek?
Yes. So,
Oh boy.
these are all questions about Frank.
Okay. Oh, good. Good. Yes.
Bless me, Father, for I have sinned.
Good.
So you had some good times with Frank?
Because Derek's still waiting. That's what he's alluding to. Derek's still waiting.
I know you can't see me, but
Hey, Derek.
yeah.
I have never had a bad time with Frank. Anytime I've ever been with Frank, it's been a good time.
There's usually been alcohol involved.
Usually. But that's not an excuse. Before we actually fell to the floor, we had a good time. We were upright. We were okay. Of course, Derek, all of us actually stay kind of attached to Frank because of who he's married to. It has nothing really to do with Frank.
Yeah, she's very sweet.
Let's be honest. Okay.
Do you have anything else, Mr. Harris? Have you anything, or are you done?
That's it. That's all for today.
Billy, any closing thoughts?
Just had a pleasure interviewing you, man. It was a really nice meeting you. I'm delighted to meet you, and you got some great stories, and they were great for us to hear.
Well, I go ahead. I'm sorry.
Okay, go ahead, Derek.
Well, I was just wondering about the groupies. If you wanted to share a couple stories about groupies.
Yeah, I'll call you back. Frank, give me Derek's number. I'd be happy to tell you, Derek. Maybe not like this.
Yeah, wait another decade or so, Matthew. You know what I mean? Give it to him in about 10 years.
10 years, the stories will even get better.
I want to say this too, to you, Billy.
Uh-oh. Waterworks.
Thank you for your service, number one.
Thank you, brother. I appreciate it.
And some of my closest friends are firemen in New York City. Because of a golf tournament, again, in June after 9/11, I met 4 guys from Engine 7 Ladder 1, which was right down there by the World Trade Center.
They got hit hard.
I have stayed friendly with them through all these years. There are no finer people anywhere, and I can't tell you how much I admire you. Even though I don't really know you, and I hope I get to hang around with you, but
That'd be my good fortune, Matthew. My good fortune. I tell you, I really appreciate it, and I know the quality of the men you're talking about only too well. And so thank you for that. And those guys got hit hard in Lower Manhattan. They got hit hard that day. I still got the hat with the 343, and that's what we lost that day. And never a day goes by that, of course, we all don't think about what happened. That tragedy. And thank you so much for that, Matthew. I really appreciate it. Very sincere.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you, Matthew. You're the best. You're the best.
Thanks, Frankie.
Pleasure
Billy.
meeting you. Hit him straight, brother. Hit him straight. Hit him infrequently.
Frank, when you see me next, I'll be an 8 handicap.
When I see you next, you'll be 80. Take care, pal.
Take care, brother.
Right.
Thank you.
See ya.
That's just the sweetheart of a guy. What a nice thing to say at the end, a tribute to the brothers and at 9/11, and very nice and sincere. A very nice guy.
He's a good guy.
A sweetheart, and he cracked me up when he said because of celebrity golf that he met his wife, and I was thinking, Jesus, if I met my wife, she'd have to meet me in the woods. That's where I'd be if I was playing golf. Hey, fancy meeting you here.
So let's close with this week in history.
Oh, okay.
It's May 12th, 1950.
Oh, let's see, 1950.
May 12th.
49 was Mao's son. China goes communist. 1950.
He later partnered with Jack Burns on a radio show.
I'm blank.
Today was the first day George Carlin ever appeared on the radio in Los Angeles.
Is that right?
A star was born on this day.
1950.
Yep.
And he wasn't the hippy dippy weatherman yet. He was straight. He was like really straight, right?
Yep. And you know Jack Burns at all?
No.
He had a comedy duo, Burns and Shriver.
Oh, now I know.
Yeah.
Avery Schreiber, the mustache,
Yes,
and
and
Burns.
Jack Burns was the straight man.
He was the other guy.
He was the other guy. Well, George Carlin, he was George Carlin's other guy. And they debuted on radio today, in May 12th, 1950.
Burns and Schreiber.
Yep.
Huh?
Yep.
It's, well, Carlin's always been one of my heroes. You know, I met his daughter once in the green room, and she was sweet, Kelly, but her book doesn't measure up, you know, to the man. You know, she's writing a book about a father, so, you know.
Yeah. Well, when we were doing, I think it was Something Wilder, we shared a floor with, we were on one side of the hall with Something Wilder, and the other side of the hall was the George Carlin show. So we used to see him all the time. He was a pretty cool guy.
I got to laugh because when Matthew was on, you said, you might be 87, but you're not an 11 handicap, right? Like, there was a story in the firehouse. We had some fucking, and I tell you all the time about how crazy the guys in the firehouse. Well, this guy came in with a negative, right? And he's showing the guys in the firehouse. Now, this is a den of vipers, and he's showing this guys a negative. He goes, here's a picture. This negative is my wife blowing me. So everybody's looking at it, you know, like, let me see that, you know. So the mutt, but they get it to the mutt anyway. Of course, the mutt is quick. You know, the mutt takes a look and he goes, that's not your wife. He's, yeah. He goes, I'm telling you, that's my wife. He goes, that's not your wife. He goes, I'm telling you, that's my wife. He goes, well, it's definitely not your dick.
Say goodnight, Billy.
Good night, Billy.
Next week's guest, rock and roll musician and Broadway star, Pepe Castro.
We'll see you next week.